Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Do you think everybody who should join has joined?
Let me check.
Okay, so welcome to this parallel session. And I am Antonio Iliceto from Terna, the Italian TSO, and representing here ENSO A together with Aris Dimias. This session, which will consist on a pitch from some projects and then a panel discussion followed by Q&A. We can move the slides so we can share the structure. Okay, the title is Market-Based Energy Systems. The pitch of the four projects you can see on the screen are from Trinity projects, Fever projects, Crossbow projects, EU Sysflex. And the same speakers will then animate a panel discussion. We will have some questions, and then we can take questions also from the audience. You can put them on the chat of Teams. We can show, I think this is next slides, how it will work. We, the moderators, will follow the chat and questions to be placed to the speakers. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. The same rules apply as in the general session you have just been following. That is, you will be unmuted only when you want to speak, and the camera will be on only for the speakers. You can go to the following slide. I don't know if you see the same that I'm watching is the one with the names of the presenters.
Sorry.
And
I think we are going to the first slide.
Hello, can you still?
Sorry, Antonio.
Hello, can you hear and see me? Yes, Aris, please, we are going also to have some Slido questions, and the answers will be commented, and all of this will be wrapped up for the general session where we will convey our takeaways for the final session. Okay, the conversation on Slido, you should have received the
Sorry, Antonio.
Credentials to enter the link actually, and the first question have been answered already in the general session, and now we also ask you to identify main problems in European energy markets with one word. So can you please the next slide. Hello, Aris.
Yes.
No, I thought you were saying something.
Sorry, can you hear me, Antonio?
Yes.
I think the first question is already launched in the Slido. I don't know if you have access and you can answer it.
Okay. I understand this will go in parallel, or do you want to comment it before we go to the pitches, Aris?
Okay, let's move on with the pitches. So now we are going to have a short
pitches mean only that the presentation of the project. Yes, it's very short, and I leave the floor to Aris to moderate. Please, Aris, the floor is yours.
So we are going to have 4 small presentations from the 4 projects that are represented in this panel session. So we will start with Trinity, and Alvaro, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here, and I'm glad to present the Trinity project here in the ETIP SNET workshop. Well, the Trinity project Yeah. The Trinity project is a project that aims to improve the coordination and cooperation of the transmission system operators of Southeastern Europe region, and also integrate their electricity markets whilst increasing the share of renewables in their energy mix. We will achieve that thanks to 4 different Trinity technologies that will be addressed to 4 different type of end users. These end users are renewable energy promoters, market operators, transmission system operators, and the regional security center of Belgrade. And for them, we are developing the TRS control center that will manage a portfolio of RES units and will allow renewable plannings in the region. The team market coupling framework that is a product for market operators in order to facilitate the integration of the electricity markets of the Southeastern Europe region. The T-Sentinel toolset that will provide power security checks in close to real-time time frames, and the T-coordination platform that will facilitate the work of the regional security coordinator in coordinating the different TSOs of the region. Next slide, please. And well, we will test our technologies in 3 different scenarios. The most relevant for this forum is the first one, the first scenario, which is the Southeastern Europe market integration one, in which will be demonstrated in Hungary, Serbia, Serbia, Bulgaria, North Macedonia, Bosnia, Montenegro, that will mainly rely on the T-market coupling framework. And also we have the second scenario, which deals with the coordination of the different TSOs of the region, that mainly deals with the T-Sentinel toolset and the coordination platform. And finally, we have the third scenario, which is the increase of renewables in the region that mainly deals with the TRS control center. And that's all in this initial pitch. And if you have further doubts or questions during the meeting, I will be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvaro. Next, we are moving to the Fever project. So, yes.
Hello, Aris. Thank you for having me today. So Fever is a project that deals with the implementation of novel tools and mechanisms for leveraging flexibility and offering flexibility coming from the distribution grid to resolve the issues of the distribution grid. So it is a project that is will last 42 months. We have 3 pilots across Europe in Spain, Germany, and Cyprus, as well as a large-scale simulation of novel market mechanisms. There are 3 axes, as you can see, one related to the tools for the DSOs for enhancing their monitoring and controllability of their distribution grid. The other dimension related to the mechanisms for flexibility aggregation and management, and finally a dimension related to novel market mechanisms that support and incorporate flexibility services. Next slide, please. So since the session is about market-based approach, energy systems, so what is the approach of Fever? We will have we propose and demonstrate or simulate mechanisms related either to day-ahead markets or intraday market or real-time market when it comes to wholesale markets, and how flexibility is being traded there, but also demonstration of decentralized local or regional markets, as well as peer-to-peer markets, again, where novel flexibility products are being formulated and traded. The role of energy communities is something that we will also explore. Next slide, please. The project is primarily about the implementation of novel tools and mechanisms, novel ICT tools that leverage flexibility and enable flexibility aggregators or BSPs to provide this flexibility, trade this flexibility either in retail or in wholesale markets. So you can see that there are many different building blocks for this to happen, and for each of these building blocks, the project will deliver innovative solutions. So we will have the chance to dig into some of these dimensions later on during our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Elias. So before going to Crossbow, just to mention that Daniela shared on the chat the link to Slido again, and the first question is active, so feel free to answer. So we can move now to the Crossbow project. Alexandra.
Yeah, hello, Aris.
Hello.
You can hear me, right? It's okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to present Crossbow project within ETIP SNET. So please just go to the next slide if possible. Yes, this is going to be a presentation for the Crossbow project. We can move on to the next one. It is a really large project that encompasses a number of partners coming from the 8 TSOs from the Southeast European countries, one TSO, one regional security center, the one that was already mentioned by Alvaro and within the project Trinity. So we also have large producers, and we have then technology partners, meaning industrial partners and universities, all of them cooperating together to develop and demonstrate new solutions that will facilitate further market developments within this region. So could we go to the next slide, please? Just in brief, as I mentioned, all of the partners that were presented in the previous slide are working together in developing and testing the 9 different products. These products are then linked within 9 high-level use cases. So the products are integrated together and linked, and within these high-level use cases, the products are tested and their application demonstrated with the help of the transmission system operators that are also partners in this project. Finally, can we move to the next slide? The goal of these 9 various products and their use is to increase and share the use of resources within the region. Our aim is to increase the use of clean energy, use flexibility in an efficient manner, and reduce network operational costs and improve economic benefits for all of the stakeholders involved. Can we move to the next slide? Yes, I think in brief, in this few minutes, it is what I wanted to present for the Crossbow project. So I think we have more time for discussion later. Thanks.
Definitely. Thank you, Alexandra. Now we can move to EU Sysflex project and Elena.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Aris. So EU Sysflex, so maybe first, my name is Helena Gerard from Energiel Vito, and within the EU Sysflex project, I was responsible for the market design work package. So EU Sysflex, one of the big demonstration projects within Europe, 34 organizations in total, 7 demonstrations all over Europe. And the focus of EU Sysflex is to see what are the services and tools that we need to meet the needs of a system in case of more than 50% penetration of renewables. In particular, we need to do that in an efficient and coordinated way. Next slide, please. So what does that mean in terms of solutions for a market-based energy system put forward by EU Sysflex? So first, we did a deep dive into scenarios, high-risk scenarios, and looked what are the challenges arising from that for the grid, ranging from stability to adequacy, voltage, and congestion. Then the solutions. We looked at solutions for system services and markets, supported by strong data management, and obviously also we need tools for operators to use these new services and market mechanisms we develop. Typical innovations we put forward are the smart inclusion of grid constraints, how to do that. Second, we look at different market design options for all those system services, from centralized to decentralized to peer-to-peer markets. Third, we look at the implications for TSO-DSO coordination in case of all those market design options. In particular, we focus also on the cross-border aspect of this cooperation. Of course, you cannot talk about flexibility without looking at the incentives for the right investments, and then looking more at the commercial side. What are typical new concepts for aggregation that we need? For example, what can we do with virtual power plants? And to finalize, we cannot talk about system services and markets and market-based mechanisms if we do not pose the question, what should be the appropriate degree of regulation in that topic? So I would say if you're interested in these topics, we can discuss later today, and you can of course follow the EU Sysflex project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elena. So about the slide, I don't know, Daniela, do you want to share your screen?
Yes.
Well, the message is very clear, or is it only one answer yet? Okay. I thought it was open also before.
Just to remind you, the link for the Slido is on the chat.
Yes, at the beginning of the chat of this session, because there are different chats for different sessions.
So I think we can move now to the panel discussion.
Yes. Okay. So in any case, we had for this first question a totally 100% answer of yes. Okay, local energy markets are important. Okay, for the panel discussion, the panelists are the same presenters of the pitch, which we thank for being very short but very effective in understanding all the audience what the project is. So we have a substance. I will start with this question. If you in your project you have designed a new market mechanism, I would place on to Elena, Ilias, and Alvaro. You can go in this order, please.
Okay,
Elena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will start. Yes, indeed. Within EU Sysflex, we focus very much first on the design of novel services in a high-res scenario, so that our services based on both active and reactive power, and ranging from frequency to non-frequency services, congestion management, and voltage. And for each of these services, we analyzed 4 processes: pre-qualification, procurement, activation, and settlement. And we did that for 3 different market design options: a centralized variant, a decentralized option, and the distributed option. And the conclusion was in some cases very clear. Distributed concepts are, for example, more suited for very local needs, and for typical services for system security, like fast frequency response, you typically will look more into a centralized option. It becomes, however, more complex, and that was one of the key novelties from our project, when you look at concepts where you start combining a market for flexibility for congestion management, for TSOs and DSOs, and balancing. And in this case, questions such as the priority for the local level and so on become part of the equation. And the answer, which is optimal, depends really on the type of flexibility, the state of the grid, the frequency of the system need, and so on. So that's something where within the Sysflex we tried to bring clarity. What are typically the parameters that you need to look at before you take a decision? And further exploring the option of this integrated approach between TSOs and DSOs, where you have both a need for balancing and congestion management in the same market mechanism, we analyzed actually also how far this integration should go. Is it just a coordinated approach where you still have separated markets, but you just coordinate the timeframes in a nice way, and you make sure there's no negative interference? Or do you really go to something completely integrated with a common procurement and coordinated activation? And that's then the final conclusion. We assessed that there is absolute benefit to go for a very integrated approach as a market mechanism, but it should be assessed on a national level if the benefits are higher than the negative impact of a significant decrease, however, in the operational complexity of the entire market process. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. And actually, this versatility and flexibility in using flexibilities and designing markets is important, and I think your project has a deep dive on it. Elias, you want to elaborate on this?
Yes, thank you. So indeed, novel market mechanisms are necessary. This is, I think, the commonplace among many different projects. And in our case, we explore this both in the, let's say, in the wholesale and in the retail market plane. So with regards to the former, the project partners proposed novel mechanisms, for example, for day ahead, day ahead market mechanisms. That is in fact 2 iterations mechanisms, where at the first level we solve, let's say, a social welfare optimization problem, while at the second phase we solve local cost optimization, taking into account the detailed grid model and data information stemming from the status of the distribution grid. I could also refer to a real-time mechanism, which again combines the real-time congestion management for us a prerequisite for providing balancing services. Going then to the retail plane, we also explore novel market mechanisms, starting from a core, which could be, let's say, a local energy community, where we explore the peer-to-peer trading, going further to local or regional markets, in a way that we could call as a nested market, one within the other, apparently with unnecessary interfaces and coordination among them.
Good, thank you. Interesting, this idea of having nested markets. Indeed, we need the markets to be very consistent among them, and in different time frame and in different locations, from local to global. So this nesting could be a good idea of solution. And Alvaro, What about new market mechanisms from your project, Trinity?
Well, in fact, in Trinity, we are designing 4 new market mechanisms for the Southeastern Europe region. The first one is the intraday market coupling mechanisms that will cover the empty period between the day-ahead auctions and the continuous trading, and will give value to cover the cross-border. Will be valuable for increasing the cross-border capacity. The second product or the second mechanism that we are designing is the capacity reserve market using auctions that will deal with the management of FSR products, manual frequency response, and also replacement reserves. This was the second one. The third market mechanism that we are designing is the bilateral continuous trading. This bilateral continuous trading will take into account the available intraday cross-zonal transmission capacity between the markets in the Southeastern Europe region, in case that long-term allocated capacity is available. And finally, we have the fourth mechanism, which is the guarantees of origin market, that will be bilateral and also based on auctions. That will be one of the most innovative market designs in Europe. Since we are going to complement this market with the issuing of guarantees of origins using blockchain technology, and this is in a summary the 4 market mechanisms that we are designing in Trinity.
Thank you, Alvaro. I have a short question for you in this Balkan area. These 4 mechanisms that you are showing, for example, the intraday coupling, are you following what is happening in the central area of NSOA, Central Europe? Because there we already have in place some of this kind of mechanism also for the capacity reserve, but I'm mostly referring to intraday. And second question is about the bilateral continuous trading. Do you have also other forms of bilateral trading allowed, or only this one, which seems to be for the close to gate closure?
Well, regarding the first question, yes, we are following the developments in Central Europe, since in the consortium of Trinity we have the EPEX Spot, and EPEX Spot is supporting the market operator of Serbia, which is EPEX, in the design and development of this intraday market mechanisms. And regarding the bilateral trading, sorry, actually, in the Balkans area, they are dealing with bilateral trading, but the innovation here is bilateral continuous trading.
Okay, thank you very much. I would leave Aris to place the next question.
Okay, next question is, have you developed tools for market participation? And if yes, give us some insights. So we could start with Alexandra.
Yes, thank you for the question, Aris. As I've mentioned in the introduction of Crossbow project, the Crossbow develops products that aim to facilitate the efficient use of various resources, for example, renewable energy sources, storage, demand-side management, and so on. And the idea is to provide business opportunities for these various resources to compete in providing sophisticated and close to real-time market services. Instead of, let's say, playing the passive roles and waiting for support measures as it is the status right now in some of the countries covered within the Crossbow project. But we also take in consideration all of the technical challenges that need to be resolved in order to enable these various resources to participate in the market. So we use, let's say, wide area monitoring as an essential building block for enabling the functionalities of the Crossbow products. And then the various platforms are integrated between themselves. Various products are integrated between themselves, so they can enable, let's say, coordination of various energy resources and enhance their efficient use and support their participation in the market. We also have specific products like the ancillary market tool set or the flexibility platform that actually enable, let's say, market participation of these various resources for provision of, as I said, let's say, close to or participation in the specifically to the balancing markets. I would like to say that these markets are in the region are still in the developing phase, but somehow within this project we are managing to show that the efficient use of resources cross-border is actually possible. So various platforms like DSM platform, the ancillary market also that I mentioned, or the DSM integration platform, they are all enabling participation of the various resources to the market.
Thank you, Alexandra. So now the same question for Ilias and afterwards to Alvaro.
Yes, already in my introductory presentation, the third slide indicated extended list of building blocks of tools that partners within Fever implement for the sake of leveraging flexibility and trading it in various different markets. So starting from the bottom layer, let's say, one particular dimension where we pay attention is that of the extraction and management of flexibility from various different industrial processes where indeed flexibility is somehow hidden and valuable. Going up, it is important to aggregate and manage this flexibility in an optimal way, not only from a technical perspective, but also from the financial perspective. And therefore, our project also incorporates algorithms and intelligence around this dimension. One aspect that we are also exploring is that of the management of flexibility stemming from either virtual or physical storage assets, and how this could be used in a coordinated way for the delivery of services related to voltage regulation, power quality, and the likes. Finally, another dimension, again, within the scope of the market-based energy systems, is that of the peer-to-peer trading, where the project implements a full toolbox for the support of trading that is based on blockchain technology. And we have implementation that brings novelty in various different dimensions within this environment. So these tools are built around the needs of the entities that intend to offer flexibility, but at the same time, the project also implements tools for the needs of the DSOs who will eventually make use of flexibility services. And as I mentioned, the first step, let's say, is to have enhanced visibility of the distribution grid. Therefore, tools for monitoring and analysis of the status of the distribution grid is also part of our of the Fever toolbox. Thank you.
Yes. Alvaro, you want to share your opinion?
Yes, yes. Regarding the Trinity project and this potential and these new tools for market participation, well, as I have said, we are designing for different market mechanisms, but this design is not theoretical, let's say. I mean, we will also implement this design in 4 different platforms. Which are the platforms that form the T-market coupling framework, and we will demonstrate in real life conditions with these 4 different platforms how the different market agents like retailers or rest producers can or TSOs, for example, can trade and can participate in these new markets that will favorize the unification and the harmonization of all the different markets in the Southeastern Europe region.
Thank you, Antonio.
Yes, we keep on with another question now. It's about how do you manage flexibility, all kind of flexibility like demand response or even the flexibility of the generation, renewable generation for what it can contribute. How do you manage this flexibility in the market environment? Which are the market products which are already there or which you have developed or you're trying to improve? I would ask this question first to Alexandra and Helena. Please, Alexandra, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I think I've mentioned some of this in the previous discussion. Cross-Pool Project already develops a number of products that enable various resources to participate in the market. And with regards to flexibility, we already have developed, let's say, the cooperative ownership of flexibility assets. As an example of a platform that aims to enable cooperatives to sell their flexibilities from their energy assets that are owned by the members of the cooperative to the most valuable energy or balancing market that exists or that is established. Without the need of a, let's say, a middleman or a trader in between or an aggregator and so on. Also this, let's say, this product is then related to the ancillary market toolset. So the flexibility of the assets that are in the cooperative can be, let's say, offered to the markets. And this is one example of how this is done in the project. Of course, other example exists. We have let's say, coordination of storage, distributed storage, and then through integration with the flexibility platform or the let's say the market tools, ancillary market toolset, again, they can somehow offer their flexibility to the market. So we're basically trying to with, as I said, with the use of wide area monitoring systems, functionalities, and exchange of data, is the participation of these various assets to the markets and enhance cross-border exchanges. So these are just examples of how we in the crossbow envisage this let's say, management of flexibility under market environment. The idea is to integrate the products and allow these various resources to be included in the most valuable energy or balancing market.
Thank you, Alexandra. Elena, you want to contribute also to this question?
Yeah, absolutely. So because Sysflex, the starting point of our discussion is what are actually all the services that you need in a high-res scenario. So we tried to design the entire chain of flexibility products that you need, from very fast up till very slow. We zoomed in also on the topic of congestion management to see, okay, what type of market product do you need to solve that? And we proposed, for example, a product for structural congestion, another one for forecasted congestion, and a third one for emergency cases. So that was one big objective of the Sysflex project. And then in addition to that, we also went one step further and discussed novel approaches to typical product design for system services in order to support market mechanisms. And one novelty we introduced is what we called the supermarket concept, where we actually abandoned the notion of fixed flexibility products, but we moved to a market system where flexibility providers only need to provide the characteristics of their portfolio. And so system operators will actually shop, like in a supermarket, on a daily basis to select the right type of flexibility. This is one idea that could support also the participation of FSPs and new technologies. Thank you.
Okay, good. And so I would go to another question now. Let's go on the regulatory legal, which is always often seen as a barrier. Until now, we can elaborate on if and how they encountered some regulatory barriers in your project in developing new markets, products, or new tools. I would start giving the floor to Alvaro, and then Alexandra and Elena. Please, Alvaro.
Thank you. Well, in Trinity, we have already performed an initial regulatory analysis of the whole region, and the main conclusion or the headline, let's say, is that the region is somehow synchronized in terms of EU regulation, but and well, there is also some diversity regarding the market status and the implementation of the different network codes. And going into more details or into more conclusions, well, we have also found that the development of the different day-ahead, intraday, or balancing markets is a bit different, but and the implementation and full use of the Trinity technologies requires a certain level of harmonization in this electricity and balancing markets. It is very important and even crucial that all the involved countries like Serbia, Montenegro, Bulgaria, and so on commit to the same defined standard products in order to allow this extended coupling. And it is expected that this coupling will eliminate the main barriers from all the market segments that are related to the topic of competition. This competition is currently low in the different national markets, but it is expected that this competition will expand where the market actors from all the different Southeastern Europe region join in a common coupled market. And that's all more or less the main conclusions of our analysis.
Thank you. Do you think, Alvaro, that in the energy community provisions which are in place in the Balkan area are sufficient for facing all these regulatory legal aspects, or you feel there is a lack of primary legislation like in the other full members of the European Union? So this energy community is enough for the implementation, the training, or do you think should be improved?
I mean, I think that the energy community is a very necessary support for the region, of course. But of course, they still have a lot of work to tackle. So at this moment, we need more support from them in the region. But I mean that's not mean that they are making a bad work. On the contrary, we still need them.
Thank you. I would place the same question to Alexandra then about the legal regulatory barriers.
Yes, thank you. If I may just add to the discussion that you've already started with Alvaro regarding the energy community, because in Crossbow Project we are also more or less encompassing the similar region. So as you know, we have the European Union member countries and the non-EU members or the contracting parties of the energy community. And as you said, and Alvaro also mentioned that the role of energy community is really important in this region. I mean, in the non-EU countries, because it enables early implementation of the energy-related legislation. So, without the energy community, these countries would probably be a little bit slower in implementation of this of the required legislation. What I know from their work, the countries in the region, in the Western Balkan region, are actually in the process of implementing the third energy package. So clean energy package is still not in force. Is not obligatory for these countries. But some of the network codes are already in early implementation phase, and I think the energy community is already starting the work or the preparatory work for early implementation of the clean energy package. So going back to the original question of the legal and regulatory barriers that are identified, the Crossbow project is already in its let's say final stage, and in the beginning, similarly as in Trinity, we have made an overview of the regulatory situation in the region and the differences between the countries. And on one hand, as the TSOs are, let's say, members of NSOE, and the network has been integrated for so many years, there is cooperation on technical levels, but there is fragmentation on, let's say, horizontal level. So missing horizontal harmonization in terms of, let's say, VAT or public procurement law or similar things are, let's say, slowing the cooperation between the countries in terms of coupling the markets. And the reality is that, as Alvaro also mentioned, lack of competition and market liquidity. So the markets are still fragmented, but from 2018 until now, there has always been a progress in each of these countries, and this shows that the region moves forward, maybe with a different pace than the Union, but still moves forward. And I think it's not only how to say, the requirements from the energy community, but also the need to cooperate and to slowly move in this market integration and coupling of regions. So in light of the new package, I think we are at Crossbow, within Crossbow, we are doing let's say sort of analysis of the products versus the new package, and by the end of the project we will have let's say some inputs into what are the barriers or the expected or maybe things that we should look into from the aspect of implementation of the clean energy package. But we know that the clean energy package successfully, let's say, addresses many barriers that were already identified in the previous years from the previous packages. And introduces provisions for, let's say, establishing energy communities and so on. So we would closely look into, let's say, the provisions and how energy communities are and our, let's say, cooperative ownerships, and how are they related, and if we see any issues in their implementation. Or, for example, what is really interesting for us at this point is the regional cooperation centers, or the evolvement of the existing regional security centers to the regional coordination centers from the new legislation. So we have still some things to look into, and I hope maybe in some future discussions we can add valuable inputs. Yes, that will be.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra, for this contribution. I will place the same question also to Helena about the regulatory barriers, if any.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. So we also asked the question internally, because we have a lot of demonstrations within the Sysflex that presented different tools. What was actually the key problem at regulatory level? And as most of the demos deal with the question how to optimize flexibility use and TSO-DSO coordination, one important barrier noted was the fact that today, in some countries, the transposition of the new roles and responsibilities of the DSO into national law has not been finalized yet. So that was considered as a key element, because every concept or tool that we develop somehow includes both system operators and obviously also their novel roles and responsibilities. So that's an important one. And then, of course, there is the question, is what we have today in terms of roles and responsibilities for TSOs and DSOs, is that sufficient, or do we even need to go further? And then we talk about the entire discussion on should we have a network code for flexibility and so on. But there are two other elements that I would also like to address from EU Sysflex when we talk about the regulatory discussion. The second one is, it starts with an economic challenge, because we have developed several scenarios, high-risk scenarios, and we see that the change in the energy mix, in particular, has an impact on the conventional generation with load factors that are relatively low. So that means also that actually the market, they cannot kind of cover anymore the costs by the revenues from the market, and that problem becomes worse with increasing RES. So there is indeed the question, what should we do? Should regulation come with subsidies or financial support in terms of, for example, capacity remuneration mechanism? Or, and that's something else that we saw in the scenarios, will the cost of system services increase in the future? Because there we also saw that indeed the need for system services will increase, also the complexity of these services, and there might be additional revenue streams that are part of the equation. So that's really the question to the regulatory framework or to the regulators, find the right balance between, on one hand, subsidizing, but also taking into account that new revenue streams might come from system services. And the third element I would like to say when we talk about regulation is that Sysflex also looked at different system services and tried to answer, can we actually have for every product or for every system service a product that we procure via a market? And typically, when we talk about system services for security, like inertia, the typical answer is no, this should be regulated, typically via network codes, and we will not really procure these services via a market. But then we had big discussions within the project, and we kind of came to the conclusion that the answer is a bit more, I would say, balanced. You can indeed, the principle is only regulate when a market-based approach is not possible. But even in a regulated setting, like for example, for inertia, you might still consider out-of-the-box solutions that give the possibility to introduce a concept of a market. For example, think about a secondary market of trading of inertia certificates. That's something we have not explored completely, similar to CO2F certificates, but that tells you that even if you go for something more regulated within a network code, there might be options to still introduce the market-based concept. So thank you very much.
Yes, about the second item, the second issue on the need of capacity market, I'm deeply convinced that this design it's a wider issue, not only in the countries and in the projects that you mentioned. It's actually a basic design which goes back maybe 30 years in Europe, which was envisaged for putting into competition thermal plants between each other, and now it's totally outdated because many plants are there with low or even zero marginal costs. So if you base only the system with marginal pricing, you will have a lot of hours with zero or even negative where it is possible pricing. And on the contrary, you need to properly evaluate these services and the capacity in many countries. Also in Italy, where I am, we have this capacity market mechanism, but there should be a European harmonization on this, and I think this will be one of the most important for the transition. Maybe in 2050 there will be not many of them, but we have this long transition in which grid operators like my company, we have to rely on sources of services from plants with very little load factor in the year, so they need something different than the energy only market. Thank you for raising this. To close this round, I would ask Ilias to elaborate on legal regulatory barriers or even other kind of barriers that you have encountered in your project and on which you would like to raise attention to the audience.
In fact, most of the issues that were already mentioned by the speakers earlier are also the experience that we have in our project. The issue of the transposition of the directives in the various different countries where we have the demos is something that is indeed challenging for us, and the role of the DSO in the possibility, the ability to run real life demos where we, for example, of decentralized or local flexibility markets. At the time of the preparation of the proposal, we thought that this would be, let's say, issues that would be resolved, but still this is not the case. It's a bit slower than we expected. Other than that, I would be reluctant on using the term obstacles, but still I would use the term challenge to highlight the fact that the participation, the engagement of prosumers is something that proved to be really challenging. The understanding or even our ability to clearly express what is the added value for participating in local markets, in peer-to-peer markets, what is the value out of this participation, whereas whether it's monetary value or it's another kind of value, societal or something else, it is indeed challenging. It is something that when it comes to deployment and implementation of demonstrations is really not very easy to tackle.
Thank you very much also for this vision. I would continue leaving the floor to Aris for the next question.
Okay. Before moving to the next question, just to remind you that for all the participants, you have the opportunity, if you have any question, to type this question in the chat. So next question, let's say it's more open question. It's whether do you want to highlight some important aspects in your project not covered by the previous questions. So we could start with Alexandra.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's always a lot to discuss in these panels, I think, and maybe I would like to, from the aspect of crossbow, I would like to highlight regional cooperation, which is, I think, one of the most important aspects of our project. But I will, since we have been discussing also legal and regulatory barriers, I think this is also important from that point of view, because regional cooperation is a legal obligation for the TSOs to ensure secure system operation. System operation guidelines network code is actually requires this. So we already have some common requirements for cross-border cooperation that are set in the regulation, and there is a mandatory participation for TSOs in the, let's say, regional security centers, and we have one of those, the SCC in Belgrade, participating in our project. Our project actually shows that we have to bear in mind that synchronous areas extend beyond the borders of the EU. So we have the other countries that are actually part of the system, although maybe not implementing all of the let's say regulatory frameworks yet. So the regional security centers are very important for let's say market. They contribute, maybe it's overstated, let's say, important, but they really contribute to market development and coupling by implementation of let's say requirements from CACM or FCA codes. So bearing in mind all of that, and also the new let's say the expectation that regional cooperation expands in near future from the stipulations in regulation 943. So we have moving towards regional coordination centers that will replace the regional security centers that we have today. So in light of this, we have to prepare for this issue, and maybe discuss this within the projects that are working, let's say, with TSOs and include regional cooperation, so that we look into let's say various solutions that will support this expansion and additional tasks that will be related to the future regional coordination centers. And as I said, this is one of the topics that we're discussing in Crossbow, and I think it's also something that we will do in the future. And finally, I would also like to highlight that the findings from Crossbow and what we have already, the developments in the region show that the energy transition will not be possible without, let's say, market integration. So I think these things are related, and these kinds of projects that we have seen today really support this transition that will still take time to happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Elena?
Yes, thank you very much. So also on the side of EU Sysflex, there was one specific element where we looked into that we consider as very relevant in the debate. So this session was all about market-based systems and also market aspects and even business models. But there is one element when we talk about a well-functioning market, and that's the fact that we need to respect grid constraints. And that seems a bit like a principle that we all agree upon. But then if you look how to do that, there are multiple options. Now you could do that in the pre-qualification phase before you have your actual market session, or you can do that during the procurement phase. And even if you do that during the procurement phase, so the process of buying the flexibility, then there are multiple options that depend on when you will integrate the data of the grid. And even more important, which data you will integrate in your market process. Now, are you going for a full grid model? Are you going for partial data or sensitivities, or in some cases even no data at all? And this is important to choose. So you see there are multiple options, and again, there are advantages and disadvantages. For example, typical pre-qualification processes, they could be very static and kind of limit or let's say limit the amount of flexibility that in the end can participate. But if you go then to the full implementation of a full grid model in a real-time market, that becomes very heavy at the computational level. So it's not only a question of what is feasible and how much flexibility will you have, it's also the choice that you will make will also impact, again, the role and responsibility of the system operator. And dependent on which data you need for your market session, it also gives, I would say, argumentation if you can assign certain activities of this market to a possible commercial third party in the role of a market operator. And that's a big debate which is ongoing. So which of these parts, if you talk about flexibility procurement by system services, should you keep under the umbrella of the system operator, for example, due to confidentiality of data, and which activities could you actually allocate to a third party? And we kind of touched upon that debate via the discussion on which are the options of grid constraints, but obviously there are other dimensions as well. And it might be worthwhile at least to think about it because it's this barrier, this edge or frontier between regulation and commercial activities. And when we talk about flexibility services, this becomes a bit, I would say more fluid. So that was one element that we think that needs further attention also in upcoming projects and discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. And Alvaro?
Regarding Trinity, well, I want to highlight regarding Trinity, I want to highlight one point that I think that make us, let's say, different from other projects, and is the point of the guarantees of origin. In Trinity, we have in Serbia, the market operator, and also we have the issuing body of Serbia, which is EMS, also the TSO of Serbia. And here, as they have said, we are developing a warranties of origin platform that will have two ways of work with bilateral trading and with auction trading. This auction trading would be especially relevant since would be one of the few auction platforms of warranties of origins in Europe. And we will complement this new market platform for warranties of origin with the issuing of warranties of origin using blockchain technology that will allow us to have faster and more reliable warranties of origins issued. We have designed this blockchain structure using the Stellar blockchain, and it is expected that in the next months we can start with the demonstration activities, since we think that the warranties of origin are crucial for increasing the profitability of res plants and attract investors to this kind of green technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvaro.
Aris, we have one question in the chat, so it might be the icebreaker because we still have 10-15 minutes for fostering also more discussion from the audience. The question was is for the supermarket concept. So actually to invest in flexibility assets, which then will have income from selling services, flexibility services to grid operators. How this is compatible with the concept of supermarket?
Thank you for the question. It's actually a very smart question, but also a complex question at the same time, because it touches upon several discussions. It touches upon what are the right incentives, or what is actually the trade-off between network investment and flexibility use. It also triggers a question, okay, what should a DSO upfront communicate to the market so that we can have the investments in flexibility? It also touches upon the question, how local can a market be, or should a market be? So anyway, complex question, but let me answer the following. So the supermarket concept, just as a short recap, it was a concept where you have no fixed flexibility products anymore. So where just a pool of flexibility is grouped, and then the FSP tells what are typical the characteristics. That's very compatible with concepts where you have multiple services combined. So for example, a pool that can provide both balancing, congestion management, maybe some restoration reserves, and other specific services. So there it's not so, I would say, not so tailored to one specific service in one specific location. It's clear that if you talk about a very local problem and one very specific technology that could solve exactly that problem in that local area, yeah, then of course a supermarket concept is way too broad and will not give the right investment or incentive that exactly that asset will be, I would say, located in that area. So let me be clear, supermarket concept not so suited for local isolated problems that can only be, I would say, supported by a specific technology. Supermarket concept, it's really driven as an option, I would say an extreme option in the case of big portfolios that could serve multiple purposes and where you really go for this integrated view between TSOs and DSOs. So that's a bit what we can say about that concept. Also, maybe to remind that we took that concept as more or less a challenging concept. Obviously, in reality, it will never be implemented as such. There will probably be more hybrid versions where next to such a supermarket concept, maybe for close to real-time markets, you might still go for bilateral contracts with a fixed price that really can tailor this need of the DSO, long-term need, with a long-term investment in a specific flexibility asset.
Thank you.
If I could
Aris,
add,
we don't have more. Yes, please.
yes.
Please.
So if I could add to this issue, so I think it is indeed an issue what would be the incentives, let's say, for long-term investments on flexibility assets. But on the other hand, we should also take into account that there are already available flexible assets in place, and the issue is how we can leverage and generate value out of these assets. For example, I mentioned that in the case of fever, we do not only tackle, let's say, flexibility stemming from storage, but we also tackle flexibility stemming from industrial processes. And for this process, for doing this, you do not really have to make big investments. The question is to make the right investment. And of course, the question is how the aggregator can group all these flexible assets together and create value out of them. So there are different business models incorporating different flexibility assets, and for each of these, one could consider a market-based mechanism or even a bilateral contract-based mechanism for generating value out of it.
Thank you for this. Aris, do you have any question? Listening to so many interesting concepts from our speakers, so we can complement the chat.
Just one question. The last question for Elias. About future research.
Yes. Actually, this is for whoever wants to contribute on this. Normally, the outcomes of a project, research project, are important, but also what you suggest. You find that it is worth for more research, which cannot be concluded within the time frame and the budget and the organization of this project. Please.
Okay, if I may start, I will try to be quick on this. So I think that one issue that, at least in our case, appears to deserve further research is the accurate pricing. I mean, we have two, let's say, entities, the flexibility procurers, who value flexibility on the basis of the, for example, in the case of the DSO, of the status of the grid, all their need to postpone investments. And on the other hand, we have the flexibility providers who, as we already started discussing, value their flexibility, their service, taking into account the investments that they have done and processes, operations that potentially are adapted or changed in order to be able for them to be able to provide the service. So the matching, the accurate pricing is something that deserves further research, I would say. And the second and last item I would add is has to do exactly with the debate on whether we should build markets that have standard products and services, or whether the products and the services should be not standardized. It should be up to the flexibility providers to formulate, let's say, different products, also providing services to different procurers, leveraging the same pool of flexible assets. That's all from my side.
Thank you. Aris, in theory, we have few minutes unless we want to
Yes.
give a coffee break or a snack break. But if you have some comments, we heard many interesting concepts, and all these R&D projects actually they are all necessary because they complement each other. And there is no one solution. We need many solutions. We need the flexibility, and I can tell you from grid operator perspective, we badly need more and more services to enlarge, to broaden the range of services provided, or new ones, not only thanks to technology innovation, but also to process innovation, aggregation, and then from sector coupling, we do expect a lot, although there are no real many R&D projects still assessing there. So we hope with the Horizon Europe we will have a new wave of projects possibly already at demo stage, showing what are these potentials from coupling the sectors. That's one message from me.
Okay, and I think before closing, we have one last question on Slido. If you could identify the main goal for European energy markets to be reached by 2030. Interoperability, enhance interconnections, flexibility. Okay, let's see.
There is a clear winner there.
It's flexibility.
Yeah, but what I can tell you, we need it much earlier than 2030. So we will need also more things. Integration. My personal view, we need flexibility already now, and more in the midterm, we will need integration. But I agree with these two winners.
So I think we should conclude here, have a couple of minutes of break and move to the next session.
Yes, and Aris, I have emailed you a proposal for wrap up in the provided slide. Thank you all. It was very interesting and very variegated opinions for the debate. We will meet in the plenary session again. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.